Hey, what's going on, everybody? What's going on, everybody? This is the You Ain't Finna Give It Up to Me Like That podcast. Also, in uh, joining along with uh, Into the Crisis YouTube channel as well. You see, we have with us Malik, Cuban Crisis from Into the Crisis. He's present today. We got Reese from the podcast and also Erica from the podcast as well. What's going on, y'all? Thanks everybody who's showing up and attending in the audience. Make sure you guys hit that like button on both channels. If you're watching from Into the Crisis or the podcast, make sure you go like and subscribe. What's going on, guys? Today we're going to be discussing something that we all whoever's checked out recently. Of course, Cuban Crisis has been doing shows on his channel Into the Crisis. Lately, he had I'd say about six individual shows where he covered UAP and UFO sightings and just information and things like that. We all watched the hearing that occurred last week. The hearing that uh, basically was titled Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena and Their Implications on National Security, Public Safety, and Government Transparency. This was hosted by the U.S. House of Representatives, uh, the Subcommittee on National Security, the Border, and Foreign Affairs was the division that was hosting it. Also, their chairman, who led the conversation, was Glenn Grothman. In the description, for those who are interested, I did post the original link to the hearing, as well as some commentary that uh, Subcommittee Chairman Glenn Grothman stated on the U.S. government's lack of transparency and lack of preparation for not handling these sightings well when they were first acknowledged by military personnel, commercial flight pilots and personnel, as well as the general public. So we've all watched the hearing at this point. Just as an introduction, um, for those uh, who haven't watched the hearing, what did you guys think about the hearing? This isn't a hearing that got a lot of public, media attention. But it was, something that was very real and was quite oftenly, tactfully discussed. What do you guys thought?
Um, well, me personally, I was kind of I don't want to say excited, but I was very interested in the information that was presented, and I thought uh, I thought it was okay. I like how at the beginning, this one of the speakers specifically said, "Hey, we're not bringing little green men and flying saucers in this conversation." So I thought I thought that was pretty neat to set the precedence. Like we're not about to hear a bunch of crazy wild stuff. You know what I'm saying? So they came with some decent level headed information, and I think we can digest it pretty well. That was that's my thoughts on it.
Gotcha, gotcha. A good point. Uh, Cuban Crisis, Erica, what are you guys' thoughts about the hearing?
I thought it was fascinating. It was definitely eye opening and kind of jaw dropping that the information is being withheld from us. However, I would love to hear about the little green men. I want to hear about a saucer. I want to see a flying saucer, but that's just me. But I think it was all very interesting.
Gotcha, gotcha. And what about you, Cuban Crisis?
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, just the fact that it was, something that was, when our government decides to have a real conversation about things, real conversations that require a bit of accountability, or I'll actually say a lot of accountability in this case. Um, it always kind of grabs my attention because you usually don't hear these things, when they're admitting, hey, somewhere we messed up, somewhere things are happening that we aren't paying attention to. And internally, and now we need to start addressing those things. So anytime, the government, which, for the people, the American people, there's always a level of distrust with the government. So anytime, someone's willing to come out and say, look, we messed up, and take accountability, I'm all for it, because it shows growth as far as the nation is. Certain individuals are not willing to just sweep things under the rug. As for the hearing, the entirety of the hearing, it was very informative. It definitely confirmed a lot of things that we've heard over time, and they definitely had to toe the line on certain things, but they made it very clear that there has been sightings of actual non-human UAPs, or what used to be called UFOs. So that's something that brought interest to me and everyone here, and I think that we really have to, for those who haven't seen the hearing, take a look at it. Try your best to listen through it. It's about 2.5 hours. We took about a after about an hour and 15 minutes, we took a break and just really kind of assessed as much as we could, and then finished up the video. I know that a lot of things that popped up as far as the overall discussion with the show was, or the hearing, was a lot of focus on um, trust, a lot of focus on uh, not necessarily knowing why the UAPs are here, not necessarily knowing, you know, where they got some of the technological advances, a lot of the focus areas as far as where they've been primarily cited, just hearing some of the descriptions of the capabilities, size, and just the overall appearance of it. Excuse me. And then also, something that I'll bring up later is how government spending was also brought up as something that is improperly being used. That now will probably come under scrutiny, as well as how certain people are being treated. Before we go into that and further questions, is there anything anybody else wants to bring up before we go into our presentation here?
Let's rock it out.
All right. So we have a presentation here by the lovely Erica here. She's actually put together a well constructed presentation. We're going to cover this first. We're going to address some of the talking points that she brings up as panel here. If you're in the chat as a guest, definitely come on and give your input, any questions that you may have, any answers to some of the questions that we may pose. Definitely put your input in. All is definitely welcome, as long as it's respectful. So here's the presentation here. I'm going to go ahead and put everybody in the back here, and we'll go ahead and get rid of this ticker. So, Erica, before we start the presentation, um, if I may ask, what was the motivation behind this presentation, and what is the overall objective you're trying to gain with this presentation?
Well, my motivation was the fact that a lot was definitely discussed during that press conference. However, nobody really talked about some of the pitfalls that might actually befall the American people by this information being kept from us. And so I wanted to highlight a couple of possibilities that may definitely overwhelm some of the American people.
All right. If you're ready, we'll definitely go ahead and get
Okay.
started. Did you want to read this particular slide, or shall we move on?
We can move on to the introduction.
Okay.
All right. And so on July 27th, 2023, there was a hearing spearheaded by a whistleblower regarding UAPs that the government has had carnal knowledge of for many years. The information has been kept from the American people under the guise of being classified. While some data may be sensitive with the possibility of threatening homeland security, there is an aspect of this knowledge that is potentially detrimental to the American people. The purpose of this presentation is to briefly shed light on two of those dangers from my perspective and opinion. And so the whistleblower is actually David Grush. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. He is a United States Air Force combat officer, a National Rec- Reconnaissance Officer, NRO. He's a veteran, and he also served in the Afghanistan War. And so I did find this information through, I believe it's Wikipedia, and the source is listed. I may post that in the chat soon after this presentation. So the next page, what is UAP? Basically, UAP is the official government name for what we used to call UFO, which is the unidentified flying objects. The acronym UAP stands for Unidentified Aerial Phenomena. The name changed from UFO to UAP because the original term had been linked to conspiracy theories, which have dulled clarity on the original meaning. The purpose was to separate from fantastical claims and focus on the grounded reality of what's happening. So their main purpose was, okay, you guys can continue to call it UFO over here. Y'all are talking about green men, you're talking about flying saucers, and all of that, hoopla. But over here, we're talking about, what's really going on in the air and what's actually coming into our planet. And so that was the whole purpose for separating the two. And so I do have a source for that definition as well, and I'll drop that in the chat. And so I wanted to get into the dangers, pretty much like, so aircrafts and electrical issues. So aircrafts were not tested for coming in contact with UAPs. And that is actually a huge thing because a lot of the times you'll get pilots in the air and sometimes things can go wrong. They may not understand what exactly is going on, especially if they've never come across it before. And that can really run into an issue if the aircraft is not necessarily reacting the way that they typically think that it should, especially the way that they are trained. And so by having something in the air that we know nothing about, that could definitely cause possible casualties later on. Um, Unfortunately, we wouldn't know anything about it because the government did keep that from us. The electrical charge from the UAP could cause an issue for the electrical system on the plane. So, electrical charges from the UAP, from what I understood, from what I heard through the whole like conference, was the fact that these aircrafts have the ability to literally suspend themselves in air without moving. And so that doesn't sound like a typical motor as you would have in the aircraft. That sounds like something possibly electrical. Without understanding the intricacies behind what that electrical system is supposed to do, we don't know what's emitting from these particular, unidentified flying objects. And so that could negatively impact the electrical system in the airplane. And as I've seen many times through, various videos over the past, few months into almost a year, electrical systems can absolutely take a flight down, basically. So that's something that we would need to know about. But up until now, this information hadn't been shared with us. However, there's been plenty of unidentified objects coming into, the airspace, sharing the same, airspace as our aircrafts as well. And so the next part of this will be pilots are not trained to handle interference from a UAP. Like I stated before, they're not trained. We don't know anything about what's going on. They don't have anything in their training that actually prepares them for the possibility of something going wrong. And with that, of course, you have pilots that may not be able to react the way that they would need to in order to recover their plane from possibly plunging out of the air or what have you. It could really cause a big problem. Compared to an intergalactic UAP, our technology as it pertains to aircrafts is completely outdated. And so you have essentially a plane that absolutely can't do half of the things that the UAPs are able to do or was stated to do. And so the technology that they have on the UAP could potentially cause, again, some sort of an issue with the actual aircrafts that we have up in the air. it's just it just wouldn't be a good it wouldn't be a good thing. The fact that all of this is being kept from the American people is really it's a detriment. By the American government keeping pertinent information from us, I think it could have dire consequences. Do we really want to wait until something bad happens to change how we do things? We have a history of not being preventative in this country. We tend to be very reactive. However, oftentimes we react after life has been lost. And so, unfortunately, it seems like in this situation, the government is almost waiting for something dire to happen to anything that we have going on in the air for them to finally dive in and say, okay, we need to do something about this, or we need to maybe at least alert the American people. Because even right now, with this whole conference that's been, going on, the government is still playing ignorant to it. They're still pretending like nothing is going on. They're saying that the claims are not true. And, they're
Right.
still not fessing up to this information. And so I think that's putting the American people at a disadvantage severely.
Absolutely.
And so then we also get to the other part of this, getting out of the air and back down on the ground. Maintaining a level of secrecy with increased activity can bring to the surface or heighten mental health issues. And so this entire time we've been told that this sort of thing doesn't exist. Anybody that's talked about, UFOs, flying objects, aliens, that sort of thing, we've been told that we're crazy, we're conspiracy theorists. And even with this conference that just happened, there are still people saying that it's a conspiracy. And so once this begins to come to light, who's to say that this isn't going to trigger some sort of mental health, reaction from those who may have actually believed it but was gaslit into thinking that it wasn't correct, only to be proven correct later? That's not being taken into consideration at all. And also, everything you know about your belief systems will come under scrutiny, within yourself, publicly. Of course, when it gets to different religions, there are definitely religions out there that doesn't acknowledge this sort of thing. And as far as they tell you, we are the only life, I don't want to go too deep into the religious thing, but it's definitely something to think about when you think about your own personal religious, viewpoints. If you're still religious, you definitely want to kind of analyze how that actually matches up to what's being said in these sessions that they're having about this. Due to the American people being sold a specific narrative about society and how we are the only species out here, having information that directly contradicts that can actually cause a shock to the system. Think about what can happen when everything you've ever known is ripped from you and a new normal is put in place suddenly. This can cause mental trauma and bring up mental health issues that may have been under control or dormant. Basically, to end this off, because I did not want this to be too long, to end off my thoughts about this topic, I feel like the government has done the American people a disservice by keeping us in the dark about the existence of extraterrestrials. The only reason why this new knowledge would be detrimental or dangerous to us is squarely because of how the information was handled, not because of the extraterrestrials themselves. This may create a deeper divide amongst the American people, and the government have only themselves to blame for that. Like we already don't necessarily trust the government, and so by knowing now, just having that information that we know for a fact now that they're lying about something, it's just going to further drive that home that we can't trust them. And we're the ones who's electing them into office. They're supposed to be working for us, so how are they in office and keeping all of this information from us when it actually would be a detriment to the people? So we really need to think about that when we're voting. We need to think about that, just period. Hold them accountable. Basically, just hold the government accountable for lying, basically. And that's all I have to say about it. I hope it made sense.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely made sense. I think it was definitely a good presentation there. Put the focus on certain areas where I think you know help it will help not only other people who are watching to pay attention to, but also to discuss some of these dangers that I think here in this this panel here. I think we can address some of those things. I think the first thing that I'd like to address is the change from UFO to UAP. I think for years it's always been UFO, unidentified flying object, but because of the hoopla and because they usually would assign any type of discussions, citing, photography, videography, and just kind of throw it in the bin of conspiracy. And now they're choosing to go back into that bin and actually validate certain things. So now it's like they're still not going to use that term, but now they have to go back and separate, okay, which claims are actually legitimate. Now we have to go back and revisit, or they're going to continue to just ignore them and only focus on what we currently have. And I think it's important to go back and revisit because you may actually have credible evidence now that you're willing to see that, okay, this is something we can't ignore. More and more is happening. Changing the name isn't going to fix the problem. The problem is they're here, they exist, and we've known about it. Well, our government has known about it for quite a while. I believe in the video, the hearing, they said the earliest findings was around like 1930, and you know, some inclined are inclined to believe they've been here longer. So I think that don't let the name change confuse you because it's still the same thing. It's just politics where they try to dress it up. And I do think that there are some people who may have misapplied the term UFO, now UAP, to something that wasn't necessarily, non-human. There's been plenty of times where drones have been assigned that phrase, and that's why I think we need to now have a thorough investigation and proper disambiguation to know what's going on and actually inform the people, the population, give us opportunities and ways to report these things so that way the credibility can be weighed and they can say, oh, okay, this is something that we're aware of that was in our space, or this is something that we're not aware of, and we need to do an investigation. Um, what are you guys' thoughts about that? Don't everybody speak at once. If no commentary, then we'll go ahead and move on. Um, I think the next thing is Erica brought up a very vital point. A lot of pilots who um, have come across, whether commercial or military, that have come across uh, sightings of UAPs. A lot of them, especially the three gentlemen that were present in the hearing, stated that there was no way that they were able to avoid or protect themselves if they had armed weaponry on, you know, their aircraft. They were no match. They clearly said that they were no match. They weren't able to meet the speed. They weren't able to catch up in time. So, being that we now have, you know, contact, a potential contact, I do think that we need to prepare, our uh, military with the weight of how to handle certain things. So far, there's no reports that I'm aware of, unless somebody else is aware of, that military personnel has been attacked. There's no reports of commercial flights being attacked, but that isn't something that we should ignore. That's something that we should at least be somewhere prepared for and at least have a plan because our government, as mentioned, is always going to be late to try to figure out and resolve things. And this is an opportunity to get ahead of the game. Even if, you know, things do happen, at least we're putting in the effort as a nation. Any commentary?
Yeah, I want to pose a question to you. Uh, how do you suggest that we prepare the military for something out of this world that they don't even understand how to deal with?
Um, I think there needs to be at least, one there needs to be some type of preparation for if they're going to be breached or attacked. I think for pilots who have one or two man aircraft, I think preparing them for ejection when breached or approached or potentially attacked would be wise to save their lives. There's no way they're going to be able to defend themselves from something that they can't catch. And there's no way they're
E-
going to be able to get away from it. But at
Exactly. That's what
least,
I was getting at. That's what I was
right,
about to
at
get at.
least if
Because,
they can remove themselves from the vessel, then at least the life of the pilot, which we know they have the capability to do that already.
but yeah, I was gonna say they're gonna 9 times out of 10 they're gonna do that already. That's
Right.
already a given. The only thing is, when you said prepare, it's hard to prepare for something you can't really prepare for, because if you remember throughout the hearing several times it was said, hey, when we got close to these UAPs, it jammed our radar systems, it made everything inoperable, and there was really nothing we can do. And they stated several times, hey, this is out of real technology, we're not even capable of dealing with anything like this is a threat to national security. So
Pre-
I don't think it's I don't
preparation.
I don't think it's a I really don't think there's you can really prepare for anything like that, unless they do have the technology and they're able to reverse engineer it. But also said within the hearing was that it was hinted, it wasn't said explicitly, but it was hinted that they've already tried to do such a thing and people have gotten hurt behind it. So
Right, right. But I do think there does have to be a sense of mental preparation because a lot of times when pilots are out in the skies, whether they are cloudy or clear, whether they are training or they're on an active mission, um, when they come across things like this, a lot of times they're at a standstill because they don't know what to do. A lot of times they don't know how to report these things because there's no system on how to report these things. And lately, when pilots have reported these things, they've been kind of shunned. They've been kind of, pushed off, and oh, you may be seeing things, and oh, you may be incorrect. And I think they just need to know how to at least handle sightings, let alone interference of a UAP. I think they need to know, okay, here's the mission objective. Do we know how to defeat this enemy? Absolutely not. Do we know if it's an enemy? Absolutely not. Can we communicate at this point? We don't think so. We're not sure. But at least, if one is sighted, there should be protocol. Okay, I believe this is a UAP. Can I have somebody from, the tower or, HQ take a look at, what's on my camera? Which means we need better radar detection. We need better, photography for those in the air. There has to be some sense of protocol. Some sense of protocol is going to help, you know, uh, the people who are involved not panic. And I think that's critical because when people who are on their everyday flight and they're training and they're solo and they see these things and you know without protocol they are either going to want to go and investigate and possibly get themselves killed, or they're going to flee from it, not letting anyone know that such a thing exists. So that's what I'm saying. There has to be some sort of protocol. There currently isn't. All sightings of UAPs or believed to be UAPs need to be documented, from our government to commercial pilots to regular everyday general population. That again, that's my opinion. As far as when it comes to the technology, there's nothing anybody at this time and at this point can do. Our technology hasn't caught up, so there isn't really much of anything that we can do.
I mean, the only thing that was stated as far as any of that really was that they, they have a superior that they reported to. That's about it. So,
Right.
it's like if somebody tries, you're telling somebody like, look, okay, this thing's real. These are Air Force, these are Navy people, whatever, or Marines, Army, whoever. It's one thing when you're telling somebody about this because they have experienced other things. They've experienced things dealing with weapons. They've experienced being exposed to various scenarios of combat or the training for combat. But when you are telling somebody something, but yet you're not able to produce that experience, once they do or if they experience, that's a whole nother story. So there's really nothing, if there's nothing they can do other than make a report.
Exactly, and that's kind of the point I was getting at a few minutes ago. Yeah, nothing you can do if you're faced with something out of this world. You don't understand the technology. Obviously, it supersedes anything that we can do on the planet. And on top of that, it's already interfering with all of the electronic systems and probably the best built fighter jets in the world. You kind of just you're really at the mercy of whatever those things are. It's really nothing you could do. I mean, you can report it to air traffic control, you can report it to your commanders, but what does that mean? I mean, it's not obviously they've tried to approach these UAPs several times, and every time they try to approach them, they move in such a way that defies the current laws of physics that we understand as humans. So it's there really is nothing you can do.
Isn't knowledge power though? Like the more interactions we have with these unidentified objects, basically, the more data we're collecting. If you're increasing, your Doppler systems, if you're increasing the technology on your electrical systems, and let's say the pilots are able to radio in and be like, "Hey, we have a situation going on. Can y'all pull it up on radar?" Don't you think that over time, like everything else, once you're able to collect enough data, you're then able to begin to put things in place that might actually start to defend yourself? Because everything starts from zero. They didn't even know how to create planes in the beginning, but they started off, with the earliest airplanes, and they continued to build upon the technology as certain, situations happen. And so this is how the airline, business, they're saying, is like the safest way to travel, period, basically, in spite of some of the crashes that have happened. After those events, they were able to, improve upon their systems, improve upon, the pilot's knowledge and understanding, and how to, prevent certain things. So isn't that a thing?
Absolutely, I agree with that. I think having having a sense of protocol is having a sense of order. What you do not want is your young pilots out there panicking because they see something that is non-human. What you do not want is for there to be no protocol and someone does something which would be considered rogue or out of order. Having a reporting system is going to help with intel. It's going to help because it's not intentional that they come across these things. These are usually, accidents, or they pop up in spaces where these things already exist or where they come to. So having some sort of intel, radar, photography, indication of what the vessel looks like and what it's doing, I think that's critical to one being more aware of the situation, and also having some transparency with the population. And I think it's critical that they have transparency with us at this point because they failed as a government to keep us involved. So having a reporting system is not only going to be beneficial for the military, also it's going to be beneficial for trained pilots who now, if they come across something while they're in the air, they don't panic. And if the flight attendants or the passengers panic, they at least know what they can do. Same with those of us who, do sightseeing and we come across them, or we have drones that maybe can catch a picture at a certain angle. there should be some protocol. I think starting from the top is where it's going to be respected. If the military has at least some idea of protocol, then that same protocol can be tweaked for commercial airlines, and then also they'll have a system, a social network system for those of us who come across those things. So I think it's important that we have that instead of just say there's nothing we can do and just allow things to be, because you are going to have pilots who are going to be like, I'm interested, I'm willing to put my life on the line and see what this thing is. And it's not necessarily the wisest move, because that could cause more drama to come when they should
Well,
just follow protocol.
if you remember the hearing, everything that you just said, they've already done that already. They,
No, there's no protocol. They stated
I'm
that.
not talking about the protocol. I'm saying like the scenarios you were describing, and also Erica described. Like the thing is, they said in the hearing several times, "Hey, we see this. It's it's on the radar from the aircraft carrier, the Nimitz class aircraft carrier. They can see it on the radar in the aircraft carrier. Hey, we have F-18s in the air. We have a squadron. Let's approach this particular UAP." So each time they got closer or close enough to it, this thing did some weird stuff. So obviously, this thing does not want to come in that close of a contact with anything that's in the air or anything near it. So
Right.
what what I'm trying to explain is you really can't defend against something that a you don't
I agree.
understand and it's out of here. And if you do get close to it, it's moving away from you and it's doing erratic things that are get that again are not of this world or not. You know what I'm saying? Not in the I'm trying to say against the physics of what we know as humans.
Right.
So I mean,
I
you can create a protocol, but that's not the reality of it is the protocol does nothing, to try to study something that doesn't want to be seen. And as far as upgrading the technology, here's the thing about that: the technology is always upgrading. These aren't the same radar systems that were first used when they first started using it. So technology is always upgrading. But the thing is, how do you prepare for something that you know nothing about? You can't upgrade something to catch something that you know nothing about. They already said it. The thing blocks and jams radars when it wants to. So how do you create something to combat that when you don't even know what it's using to do that in the first place?
I definitely hear you. My objective of bringing up protocol wasn't to combat these things. That would be, a waste of time, energy, and resources. The objective of protocol is to make sure that our pilots are understanding of the rule of operations on how to handle these sightings. That's the thing. Because there's no order, anyone could do anything. And those who have reported in the past have been shunned. There's no protocol. There's no order where, if you see these sightings, here's what you do. That has yet to be set up, and our government has failed on doing so. That's my purpose of protocol. Protocol isn't to defend or attack these things. It's at this point impossible to do with what we have. Protocol is just to keep us in check. That's all I'm saying. Um, so I think another thing that came up in the hearing was, and Erica definitely covered in this slide here, was the amount of information that was hidden from us. It's clear that our government has been privy to access to UAPs, privy enough to get their hands on them, privy enough to see them at crash sites, and able to detect them from other human-made, uh, you know, aircraft. And not only have there been testimonies from these three gentlemen at the hearing that reported not only did the government personnel have access to them, they've also utilized them, and in some cases, people have gotten hurt or killed. They didn't say explicitly that that was the case, but they alluded to people possibly getting hurt or killed. And I think that, again, being that this is happening behind the scenes and closed doors, being that other factions of our government is unaware that these things are taking place, and also being aware now that there's resources such as when they mention IRAD is independent research and development. What it is an allowable cost that allows companies to initiate and conduct research and development projects of potential interest to the DoD or Department of Defense. IRAD is reimbursed through overhead cost rates. IRAD is something like, for instance, when the company that just made the robot dog, that's an IRAD usage. When DARPA wants to create something or engineer something, DARPA uses an IRAD. What's been happening is certain government personnel have been utilizing IRAD, and instead of using it for approved R&D, they've been taking those resources and using it for uh, secret, objectives when it comes to these UAPs, and that's something that, frankly, the House reps were unaware of, and they were also unaware of who may have authorized those things. So that tells you we definitely need to be sweeping in front of our own ports before we worry about other countries and what they're doing. I think that needs to be known. I think that after hearing that hearing, I would expect, not that they will, but I would expect our government to start doing a sweep. Uh, if they don't, it just shows the consistent um, lack of accountability on our government's end to, now that you've been made aware of something, to not, you know, dig a bit deeper and figure out who's authorizing certain moves. So I think that that's important. There are consequences for that, as you can see, because it's likely that there are people who are aware of what's going on, but because that hasn't been shared with the rest of our government, we're, not caught up. We don't have that tactical advantage. And so I think it's important to be aware of these things, be aware that we're in possession of these things, and not keep it hush hush. For the general public, I think it's, in some cases, okay to keep things hush hush until they figure out exactly what it is they have and what it's capable of, and whether or not it's safe for the general public to know and understand. But as far as our House, our Congress, the president and his cabinet, I think it's critical that they be on the up and up of these things, and the fact that they aren't is a huge issue for me, because how are you running a country and you're not aware of what's going on in your backyard? Um, any comments on that before we go to the other dangers? All right. We talk about the secrecy. I think the other thing was heightened mental health issues. Uh, there have been people who have been considered crazy, considered crackpots. There are people who have been completely disregarded for, whatever evidence they may have found, that they may have taken photographs from satellites and their iPhones, and people who have written materials on things that they saw within, uh, higher ranking, government clearance areas. And, people have shunned them. People have dismissed them and written them off to be crazy. And, I always consider that like sending the cleanup crew when you did something dirty and somebody's telling or revealing it. Sending the cleanup crew is a common theme. And I think we now have to go back and see how this has affected certain people, because these people have been declared crazy, and this could be an issue with their their mental makeup, because all these years they've been receiving these hints and ideas and proof, and building their case, and now the government is like, oh, okay, yeah, these things exist, and we're gonna call it something else, but they exist. Yeah, it could definitely uh, heighten mental issues that maybe that person wouldn't have had things like that have been at least inspected and put under scrutiny. And as far as those who have certain belief systems, um, seeing now that these things are definitely likely, true, and now that there's proof that there's non-human biolife, it changes, how certain people believe about, their existence of what they choose to worship as far as religion, whatever their flavor is. So I think that that's something that, you know, as a sidebar, something that definitely has to be discussed amongst the general people, and how that's going to be handled. Of course, some may use myth and, tie, whatever religious myth they have into identifying or labeling these things. Next, thank you again, Erica, for the presentation. Well done. The next thing I want to get into for discussion here is, um, well, first I want to give the names of the men that were present. It's Mr. Grush, there's Commander Fravor, who is retired, and Mr. Graves. Um, I know that they had this discussion and kind of answered this question at the hearing, but what do you guys think? Are these sightings of UFOs or UAPs, are they considered a threat to our country's national security? What do you guys think?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was Erica. Say that one more time.
Yeah, I was saying, as far as the UAPs or UFOs, do you think that these sightings represent a threat to our country's national security?
Absolutely, it would pose a threat to any nations.
Yeah, I would say that it poses a threat to the entire globe. Honestly, I mean, I wouldn't even say it's just America. Only reason I guess we can say we think like that is because this was an American committee, focused only on this country. But I mean, in general hindsight, you got to think this is potentially threatening to the entire world. Because at the end of the day, it's an unknown. You don't know really what it is and what it's doing here, and why all of a sudden now it's being discussed. We're going into this thing where now certain members of the government are acknowledging that these things exist, but in the back of your head you can't help but to think, okay, if they're acknowledging it now, what is the reason that they're finally acknowledging it? Because with something of this nature, a lot of times you would think that the information would remain classified. And as we heard in the hearing, a lot of the information is still really classified. So we still really don't know a lot because there was only so much that was let out for the public's consumption. So it's one of those things where, okay, you've answered a few questions, but now with you answering a couple of questions, you've created more questions to know, okay, well, what's really going on here? Are we really under threat, or are these things friendly? It was also hinted during the hearing that the United States government, or certain members of the government — I hate saying the government as a whole because it's not the whole government, it's only certain members of certain branches that are involved in this, but I guess for colloquial uses, people just flat out say the government. But it was already said that, or hinted at, that the government has made contact or attempted to make contact with things out of this world. So it just makes you wonder what is really going on. Why is it now being acknowledged?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Cuban, you were gonna say something?
Nah, basically along the lines of what Marie said. That's all.
All right. What about you, Erica? Do you think these things are considered a threat to our country's national security?
Yes, actually, I do believe that, which is why it's even more necessary for them to actually let us know what's going on.
Gotcha. Yeah. While I bring that up, there was a lot of focus on our country, and in the beginning of the hearing, they mentioned the East Coast, but eventually they came out and said these things are also present along the West Coast, also the Gulf of Mexico, where they saw the Tic Tac shaped object, and then of course references across the globe. So um, I do think that it's a threat to our national security, whether they come in peace or not. I, which is why I think that you know there needs to be some transparency from our government to make sure that they keep us all, on the same page. That prevents those who have been filed in the conspiracy theorist lane from, losing their minds, and also those who have choose to deny the existence of life outside of this galaxy, outside of this planet. And now, they have to give it a second look. They have to open up their mind a little bit now that these things have been declared as evident. Something else I brought up that they brought up was in the beginning of the hearing, they said this a lot, and I'm like, why are they constantly repeating this, even though we know it to be the case? Why are they constantly repeating it? And they kept repeating, you know, that the American people doesn't trust the government. And I'm like, why is the focus on us trusting the government? Why not be trustworthy from the beginning? The focus on being trustworthy should be, something that they do. And I think if the government's at least wanting to turn in the right direction when it comes to that, I think it starts by handling this properly. And I think it starts with being as transparent as they could possibly be about how they choose to handle this with us. Will that give insight to other nations and countries on how they should handle things or how America handles things? Absolutely. But what's more important is transparency with the American people. Because if our government can't do anything, I guarantee you, we as the general population are incapable of doing anything. So the last thing that we need is to be off the kilter and completely ignorant of what's going on. So I think it's important that they make the right turn, but I just felt it was kind of like they were trying to push a point by saying, "Oh well, the population doesn't trust the government," which it shouldn't be like that. Any thoughts before I go to the next point?
No, I think I mean, yeah.
All right.
'Cause
The I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, I mean, yeah, of course, as a general population, you probably don't trust the government. Um, but in the same breath, um, you gotta think with all of the international situations that have happened from when these some of these countries were started up until now. Do you really think it's necessary for the general public to know every single detail about the inner workings that's going on behind the scenes? I just personally think there are some things that we don't have to be privy to. It doesn't necessarily have to be this particular topic, but some things we don't really need to have to know. We can live our everyday lives and go on about our business, but we don't have to know every single, hair that the government pulls. I don't think it's necessary. And I think that would, I think if we did or they were so transparent, that would create more of an issue, because then you really could say it is a threat to national security. Because if you have the general public knowing things that they shouldn't, this information obviously, if the information is readily available to the general public of that nation, the information is also readily available to the world, to be honest, especially with living in a social media or internet age. So do you really want your information that should stay amongst your country or a certain group of people to be funneled out all over the world when you have enemies or you have standoffs with these different countries, and it's certain things that they don't need to know about you and your capabilities as a nation? So it's just one of those things. It's kind of like a slippery slope.
Right, right. I definitely want to go over something real quickly before we continue. Thanks to Cuban Crisis, he actually shared this. I want to share this as well. One second here. So he posted a link of a live sighting of UAPs currently. I'm not going to play the video. You guys will have to click the link in the chat to go take a look at that. But what I will do is show you a screenshot of what we have here, just so you guys can see it and take a look. And then definitely go, after you watch this video, definitely go take a look at that one. But let me present here real quick. Let's see. Right there. So hopefully you guys can see that here. I'm going to put this as full screen so everybody can see. This is just now, it's live, but I paused it at a certain point. Recent recording in Homestead, Florida of UAPs flying in the air. You can go to WorldCam on YouTube and take a look at the video. The video is also in the chat. Again, how credible this is, I'm not 100% sure. Whether this is, our aircraft or not, I'm not 100% sure. But by the way that they're moving, um, and how they were in unison before they split, at this point, it's definitely worth a look. Again, we're not going to confirm or deny that these things are UAPs, but take a look if you're interested, and let us know what you think. But we're going to go ahead and go back to the questions that I had taken down here. I think the next thing is we've kind of been tiptoeing around this subject, but the in the hearing it wasn't present. But since we're here, having this discussion, I think it's only right that we push the button on this. Are are aliens presently here since UAPs have been detected consistently over time? What are you guys' thoughts?
I believe so, and I also think that it's being held back by the government for whatever reason. They always have a good reason for not telling us things, right? But I do
Right.
believe that they have always been here. I just think that as a general population, we've never been able to directly pinpoint, though we suspect it. We were never directly able to pinpoint, any factual information that would back up, the theories, quote unquote, that we've had over the years. But I do believe that they do exist, and I think that they're being kept out of the way.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Reese, I know Cuban had to step away for a moment, but Maurice, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, here's the crazy thing. I'm not gonna try to go too deep into it because I don't want to really get like extra philosophical and blow everybody's minds. But the thing, I mean, it's possible. I mean, anything's possible. It's just we don't know. Um, but to be honest, that question you asked, I kind of feel like it's a loaded question, because when you say alien, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be some type of humanoid figure. Something out of this world is pretty much alien. So I mean, it could be something that NASA's brought back from the moon or Mars or something, or some type of organisms that are outside of this world, and they're studying it and trying to understand it. So I mean, is that what you're talking about when you said are aliens here? Because that's a possibility. I mean, we do know that they do missions like that, and they do bring back samples with stuff like that. I mean, are you talking about some type of humanoid and anthropomorphic figure in the flesh? I mean, it's really kind of loaded. So I mean, it's possible either way.
Well, the reason why I brought this up is I feel like it's been tiptoed for the legal reasons because Mr. Grease was actually being investigated as a whistleblower about some of his comments that he's made. And so, when asked, the words of choice that they used was UAPs, which were flown or piloted by non human uh, biological, beings, meaning that, they have a set biological makeup, but they're not human. And so we know when it comes to just hearing that the jargon that it refers to non-human, but it has its biology, so it's not like it's AI or robotics or things like that. So I think when we hear that and we speak about the biological part, I do think anything that's considered not human but also has a sense of biology would fall under the umbrella of what we classify as aliens today. I think that that's where that comes from. I just think that they were kind of tiptoeing, on that line for legal reasons. What are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean that too, but yeah, like the definition alien is anything foreign. So any, you know what I'm saying, that could mean, anything out of this world. So I mean, yes, it's possible that something's here. It's just we don't, we don't know definitively, the public at least. But as you said, you did state, and they did say in the hearing several times that, or hinted at least, that yeah, there is possibly the government does know something about some non-human biologics out there. So I mean, it's a fascinating thing. I would love to know more about it, but it's one of those things where, like, all right, now are we ready for what they may tell us? That's the real question. If it is somehow revealed to the public, like, would we be ready for that? That's the question that's echoing in my head.
I think and then also Erica can definitely give her input. I think that there's no way we'd be ready for anything that's non-human. We're barely like we're just now getting used to AI, and it's fascinating, but AI doesn't have a mind of its own yet. AI doesn't, hasn't reached that point to where it has a level of consciousness. We aren't ready for that, but consciousness can be programmed. Uh, Existence can be programmed because all existence really is a being experiencing their own existence within the environment that they're in and connecting with it. So, I mean, not to make it as simple, but without going into the gross dynamics of how that's possible, I don't think we're ready for a lot. I don't think we're ready for the evolution of AI. I don't think we're ready for the evolution of robotics. I'm not sure if you guys have seen the robot dog that's out now, but that's baby steps compared to what's coming. And eventually they're going to merge the two. They're going to merge AI with the robotics, So I don't think we're ready for that, let alone non-human, visitors. I don't think we're capable of that, of being ready for that. But I think that, people will find a way because as humans, we tend to be very cultish and we tend to have ways to be very convincing to people, other people, to help make sense out of things that don't make sense. Whether it's religion, whether it's, again, a formation of a cult, we do those things because they help make sense out of life. when we don't know what's going on and how to explain it. So yeah, I don't think it's a way we're ever going to be ready to, you know, greet with open arms what's actually coming. What are your thoughts, Erica?
I think that we definitely aren't ready for a lot of things, but we still have to go through life. We still have to deal with it on a day by day basis. I'm pretty certain the population wasn't ready for, the pandemic that happened back in 2020, 2021. We weren't ready for that. And yet we still got through it. Even though, it was difficult, we were still able to move forward just as humanity, period. And so it's like, I think that you bring up a good point. Anything that's outside of your norm, your perception on reality, your perception of life, will always be met with resistance. However, that doesn't stop life from going on. That doesn't stop the evolution process. And that doesn't stop, what's potentially been going on for some time now. I think that we will be more receptive to it now had we actually been told about it back in the 30s, when this was allegedly starting, or maybe even before that. And maybe the 30s is just when things, began to become known. I think that by now it will be just norm. However, because we're just now learning about it, of course, there's going to be a certain level of fear, but like everything, you just have to go through it. You can't evade reality. You can't evade facts. You can't evade anything just because it makes you a little uncomfortable. That's just not how you grow. That's not how you mature. That's not how you, expand your understanding on just life in general.
All right, Maurice, did you have an answer for your question, or were you just proposing that?
No, I was just proposing. I wasn't asking a question to the panel, basically, or per se. I was just, it was pretty much me, in my own head, kind of brainstorming, think, just wondering, would we be ready for whatever it is if the government was ever to announce such a thing? I just, me personally, I just think of all the different angles or what could possibly happen if such an announcement were to go down. And there's so many different reactions we can have. It would just be kind of perplexing to just them even trying to come forward with that particular information. I just think it'd be a wild day if it ever did happen.
Definitely, definitely. All right. And shout out to Marina in the chat, communicating with us and hanging out with us this Sunday evening. Uh, Another, I would say, you know, it's a question that comes up. Of course, none of us know why, but I mean, as far as if you want to, allude to your imagination or whatnot, um, as far as the non-binary, the non the non-humans that are biological, do you guys have an idea, or can you fathom why they would be here and what they want?
You could. I mean, we can come up with all kinds of different scenarios as to why, you um, but really, in the grand scheme of things, unless there's some type of organized contact between them and humans, we won't know. But until then, until that point, until we know that, uh, you're going to have what you have now. It's just pretty much all speculation. Any and every excuse you can think is going to be all speculation until there's some form of fashion way of organized contact between a possible UAP and us.
Gotcha, gotcha.
I mean,
I wage that there is a possibility that there already is communication between
I Yeah.
us and them, basically, but it's just because of the fact that it kind of goes levels up to where information is, classified. We may not necessarily get that. So even the people who have, made their experiences known, like the whistleblowers, there's even levels above them that they haven't experienced that yet, which is why they may not necessarily have the answers to everything. But I could guarantee you, if there's anything that's been flying into this planet, especially flying into our part of the country, on this planet, you better believe that we figured out a way to get some kind of communication going. So it's like, that may be speculation as well, but I do
Right.
firmly believe that we have some sort of communication with them. We just may not know about it as the general population.
Got you. Got you. I will bring to remembrance that when asked that specific question, which is, have we came into contact with them, when asked to Mr. Gross, he refrained from answering. And so you could allude to, yes, there has been human and non human contact. But like you said, it may be on a higher classified level where you kind of need to have a certain rank, security rank, to be able to even be present at those things. But you can allude to that just because of how he decided to answer the question. He could have easily said no. He could have easily said yes. But because of him refraining to answer, it's probably intricate, probably plausibly uh, on a level where we probably can't fathom at this point. Plausibly. Um, what do you guys think about the lives of former and former military pilots and government agents having their lives threatened over these sightings, and acknowledging the existence of UAPs? What are you guys' thoughts about that? That our own government is willing to threaten the lives and threaten to, criminalize and arrest their own because they choose to not keep quiet and hush about these sightings.
Honestly, to me, it makes no sense. I mean, but I guess in a certain way it does. If it's classified information, that you know what I'm saying, there is a punishment system in place for leaking classified information, of course, but in the same breath is it you know why? What are they doing that's so bad by telling everyone, at least in this particular situation, that there's possibly something out there? Like, I don't understand that part at all, and I kind of want to know why they would go after them or punish them for something of this particular situation. It's just kind of baffling to me a little bit. He did say within the committee that he's been threatened himself, and he knows of people who have been threatened and actually harmed. But he didn't really allude to who exactly. So was the punishment coming from the government or officials of the government? Was it coming from private corporations that could be in on what's going on, or a potential cover up? He didn't really go into detail about who the perpetrators were that were actually doing the um threatening or causing the physical harm. So that's kind of it's worrying a little bit, but I just don't understand why, in this particular situation, that type of behavior would be going on.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Erica?
I think it's fascinating that they're being threatened. It just makes me question all the more, what exactly is it that you're hiding? What is it that we're not supposed to know, as the general population? And I also think that it's fascinating. I remember yesterday, when we were watching that particular hearing, or informational session, I remember them saying something about someone actually having footage on a, I think it was a personal phone. And then it's like, that data was actually removed and put in a vault, and that person was no longer able to have the footage. And it wasn't even anything that was, that serious to where it needed to be, locked up in a vault and put under classifications, and yet it was. And so it just makes me wonder what they're hiding. As far as who's threatening and doing the threatening, I'm almost certain they know who's threatening them, and I'm almost certain they know that those people will make good on those threats, and so they know to keep their mouth shut. And that blows my mind. That is like something like this they would actually be threatening people's lives over, but there's so many other things that they're not addressing in this country and really across the globe that does need to be threatened.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think it's a tough position to be put in because not only are these people's lives, sense of security threatened, you know, to what end does that stop? Is it just them? Are their families also threatened? Like, so it's definitely something that, and the fact that our government is again unaware of these things happening is appalling because it's like this is happening in your backyard. It's your own people that you hire, that you scrutinize and comb, through their history with a wide tooth comb, but yet you don't know of activities such as you know these that are happening on your own home court. It's just it's appalling, but it's further showing that our government is very ignorant of their own organizations, very ignorant of corporations that they've given power to. Speaking of corporations, it was mentioned in the hearing that there are corporations involved in not only the sightings and keeping some of that hush hush, but also involved in contact, human contact with these UAPs. Um, what are you guys' thoughts about that? When asked which companies, Mr. Grease would not speak about those companies. I was hoping he did at least drop one because then we could say, okay, yeah, we're just gonna go ahead and cut this company off for good. But go ahead and ban this company from the population usage. But of course, that's too far fetched. But
Right.
as far as the fact that there are now Fortune 500 companies that are involved in this type of contact, they have a generated interest in these things. What are you guys' thoughts about that? Maurice, I think you're going to say something.
No, I mean, um, he didn't name anything specifically, but there was one company mentioned in the whole hearing. Well, I'm pretty sure it probably wasn't the only one, but there was a company mentioned in the hearing, and that was Boeing. But it didn't.
Ah,
It wasn't stated in such a way where they were saying that they were involved in anything. It was just stated that Boeing is working on certain technologies and things of that nature. So I don't want to make. I don't want to put it out here that I'm creating a conspiracy theory, but I mean it's not far fetched to think that
not at
Boeing
all.
would be in on such a thing. But there are other companies too that I can personally think of that probably this type of thing would go right up their alley. They so I mean,
I
I'm trying
mean,
trying to watch my words and
right, right. I
not
mean, well,
start
I,
some
I,
shit.
I'll even give background. Like Boeing, those of us who are familiar with Boeing, they are the company that does basically airplanes and jets. That's what we know them for. But Boeing does a lot more
Right.
than just
Correct.
build 777s and things like that. Boeing does rotorcraft. They do rockets. They design and manufacture satellites and telecommunications
Helicopters.
equipment and missiles. So they're involved in things also that the
They
military
definitely have
benefits
a
from.
yeah, they definitely have massive military contracts.
Absolutely.
So
So, and they're stationed here in Virginia, Arlington to be exact. It's again, it's a Fortune 500 multi-billion-dollar company, So they have a lot of pull and a lot of push available, and I think it's not far fetched that a company that already has military ties, that does design, manufacture, and sell those type of things, could possibly be interested, let alone involved. That's not us saying publicly as a statement that they are involved. It's just plausibility.
Yeah. I would think Lockheed Skunk Works, could
Yep.
definitely have something to do with uh some of this personally. And then there's a couple of others that could ring some bells. But I also throughout the hearing, I mean through the hearing yesterday, there was one committee member who made a statement, and if I'm not mistaken, I think that was the one that was actually from Missouri, my home state. Also, um, he asked the question to Mr. Grush: does he think that what he saw could be something that possibly came from a corporation or an enemy, or not necessarily an enemy, but another country technology? Could it be something that we created? And he emphatically said no. He doesn't think that we are capable at all of making any type of technology like that.
Yeah, yeah, he
So
definitely
I mean that
definitely said that.
that part interests me a little bit, because I'm gonna be honest, I'm kind of skeptical, and I still am skeptical about a lot of this stuff, but I'm being open-minded, receiving information, and there's only so much we can research, and it's only so far we can go, because a lot of this stuff is still classified, and we just generally don't know. But I am remaining skeptical about the thing, this whole situation. But I thought that was a valid question to ask. Hey, could this be something that some type of country is working on, or maybe a corporation is working on, and you just not aware of that? And he was very convincing to the point of no, this is something out of this world. So I think that's
Gotcha,
really interesting.
gotcha. Yeah, I was actually, while you were talking there, I remember Boeing being responsible for some spacecraft, and I did find it. It's the CST-100 Starliner. It's a space capsule that they are responsible for making, which is like a transportation vehicle for like crew to the space station and to other lower Earth orbit destinations. So they are involved in space material. They're involved in transport. They're involved in manufacturing. So it's not far fetched that companies like them are interested. I won't say they're 100% involved, which is possible, but I think that they're interested, and that definitely it raises an eyebrow. It definitely comes to question. So, my next question here for you guys, and definitely uh, interject if you guys have any questions. Let's go into some of the descriptions of some of the uh, UAPs. I know as far as what they were saying, as far as the technology was beyond what we've seen, as far as how they handled it. I know, for instance, the Tic Tac was described to be over like the size of a football field and things like that, and just these things aren't necessarily in space or in air, moving about as if they're on a recon mission. They're idle. They're idle in the air. They're not swaying like how our jets do when they turn the thrusters down. They sway from left to right. Uh, they don't hover like some of our drones may. Hovering still has a sway to it. It's almost like they're completely still, whether they're bigger or smaller, and they're able to maintain, altitude, which is, you know, again, the technology is beyond what we've seen, beyond what we've have on this planet, and so it's just interesting. As far as the technology, I think that makes it very, very intriguing. Um, that uh, there's technology that exists out here that's non-human made, that is that fascinating. Some of these things, the closest we've even gotten to, understanding or coming across these things is books, sci-fi books and sci-fi channel, and those who are familiar with the likes of Star Trek, Star Wars, and many other shows that have come from that sci-fi shows. What did you guys think about the technology from just an interest perspective? What are you guys' thoughts about that? Are you shocked? Are you amazed? Are you intrigued? Or are you not surprised?
I would say I'm not. I personally, I'm not surprised because as somebody who really studies science and understands certain things, physics and that nature. Um, and I spend a lot of time thinking about this stuff philosophically. It's like if there's something out there that has the capability to reach us that's beyond our solar system, even if it's in the solar system, but it's able to reach us. I mean, you get that kind of blows my mind because then you're like, okay, what type of capabilities do these things have? What can they do?
Right.
And we've only seen the little bit. At that hearing, they only gave us a little bit of it. We're talking about things accelerating at a rapid speed, something that's not possible with manned aircraft. That's one. So are these things manned aircraft? Are these things unmanned? Because we know that the type of maneuvers that they're pulling, a human could not withstand those type of forces on the body. It would completely rip you apart. Uh, so it's fascinating in one degree. Or are these things manned and they do have something in their control in it? And if they're able to withstand that type of pressure, that's also scary because what can we do to it? uh you know what
Right.
what like with the current state of technology we have, there's probably nothing we can do to it. um the shapes that they described, one the I heard them say football field length,
Mm-hmm.
spherical shape. I heard a cube shape with a spear inside it, or was it a spear within the cube shape? It was something of that nature.
Yeah, it's a cube with a
It
sphere.
has.
Also, a propane tank, looking like a propane tank.
Yeah, we're talking
Yeah.
about something that has no propulsion, but it's able to reach Mach speeds within the snap of a finger's time. That is
Right.
crazy. So that
Right.
means if let's just say this: if the pilots of the military jets turn on thermal imaging, they still wouldn't be able to capture these particular UAPs
No,
at supersonic movement, and they don't create sonic booms when they cross the sound barrier.
that was a big point.
That
Yep.
that is amazing. That it defies everything that we know about physics. If
Yeah.
you have something that can move that fast with no type of propulsion and it doesn't have a heat signature, not only is that fascinating, but in the same breath, that is terrifying as hell because you won't even see it coming.
Yeah. Yeah. I think real quick before I let Erica go, I think what you stated as far as it possibly being manned or unmanned, well, it may be some sense of uh, being scared that it's manned. I'm actually more terrified if it's unmanned because I'm like, whoa, what? So, it's a little bit more frightening if it's unmanned because I'm like, okay, somebody said something here from from Lord knows where. Like that
Nah,
that's That
I don't think that's I don't think that's an issue, only because I'll say this. I'm aware of technology, and I'm not saying I personally have the like some type of monopoly on this, or I know some secret stuff. But no, I am aware of technology that the government is also working on, and private corporations are working on, where they're unmanned craft and they can perform maneuvers that manned aircraft couldn't,
right, right.
because it doesn't have the limitation of having a human inside. They also have aircraft that can perform at hyper speeds,
Yeah.
things that you couldn't do with a person inside of it. So I mean, that part doesn't bother me. It doesn't, that part, I'm not even, that's the furthest thing from my mind.
I,
So it's not um it's not strange if something out of this world would send something like that here, because technically we have the same capabilities. I mean, think about the probes and the spacecraft and things of that nature that we got floating around in our solar system, that are
but,
visiting different planets and things of that nature and collecting data, and they're not manned.
I mean, but can we send a unmanned, drone that is used to fly and either for recon purposes or to go out and destroy whole villages? Can we send something like that to Mars? Like, I don't think it's gonna make it. Like, we barely can get
Yeah, but
space rockets. So,
at the same time, we're still living. So nothing that, if this is something out of this world that was sent here, I mean, those haven't destroyed us either. So I mean, it's literally the same thing. How we interpret and observe the world ourselves, and what, well, not just the world, but the solar system, as far as we can go with our limited technology at this point, it's almost as if the same thing is being done to us. The only difference is, so far, with the limited places that we've been able to visit just within our particular areas, we haven't ran across any intelligent life that we know of, the general public at least. We haven't ran across anything like that. But technically, if you want to, kind of be philosophical about it, these, maybe these could be unmanned probes being sent from somewhere else to observe us, and they just were able to see us before we were able to possibly see them. So I mean, in that same respect, they haven't destroyed us per se. So maybe they're just observing themselves.
it's interesting. What are your thoughts about the technology? Is so far, Erica, from what we've heard from the hearings and just some of the sightings that we've seen. What are your thoughts?
I honestly think it's all very fascinating. I am actually kind high key excited to learn more about this. I would love to know what type of technology are in, these crafts. I would love to know if there is, someone or something in these crafts. I think that people approach it from kind of like a fearful standpoint. You could always live in fear, or you can embrace the fact that it is what it is, they exist. And now we want to know more about it. We want to understand it more.
Mm,
And
right.
also, how can we use that knowledge to kind of elevate our own technology here on, this planet? So I think that as things go on, hopefully they'll begin to tell us more about what's going on. I'm excited to see what's discovered and how it can actually be utilized to help propel our, own planet to possibly being more technologically advanced than we are currently.
Gotcha. Yeah, I definitely agree. Definitely agree. Not sure if Cuban is back. I know you stepped away for a moment. Um, but if Cuban, if you are here, if you have any input, definitely come on and give your commentary. Um, I think I'll wrap up my questions as far as the next president, because the president that we currently have in office is
Oh my
barely
God.
the president we currently have in office can barely stand straight and walk in a straight line without falling. Um, as far as the next president, what would you guys, as far as when it concerns UAPs and non-human biological, uh, persons, what would you guys recommend as a tip, as a suggestion, as an idea to whomever may be our next president for this country? What are some of your suggestions, ideas, thoughts? What should they be doing? What should be their focus when it comes to this?
I'm going to be 100% honest. I don't believe that the president has anything to do with this. I think that the president is pretty much just a talking head. He's installed to execute certain policies or laws or whatever that they wish to push an agenda through. I don't think that the president has the clearance to even know what's going on, which is why we haven't heard from Biden. That or he's sleeping. Maybe it's Coke. I don't know. But oh, did I say that out loud? My bad. Um, but I really don't think the clearance level reaches the president. I think it's several levels over him. And so, or her, who knows who the next president will be, but um, just I guess maybe explain to the American people any information that they have. But I honestly think that they're passengers in this particular, story as well. I really don't think that the president has much more information than we do when it comes to that particular topic.
Yep. I mean, yeah, I kind of agree with Eric on that. You know, when you study civics, you understand that there's different branches of government, and there's a system of checks and balances in place, and then you also realize that there are different departments of the government that act independently from uh any branch, or they answer specifically to a certain branch. Like, let's just say, the military as a whole. The president, as an executive, he can say yay or nay, go attack XYZ. He can't tell the military that. But there's, like she said, there's also certain clearances that he doesn't even have. There's some things he's not even privy to. So, to be honest, I don't think I don't think this is something that the president is should be concerned about, unless there's a situation to where he has to give an executive order to possibly attack something, or something along those lines. But I don't even think that the president would be concerned about it, because I think we already have enough, or I take that back, not we. I think the president already has enough to worry about, and especially this particular president, because he just got to worry about standing up and just staying up. Okay, so I don't think he's really concerned, or the office should be, or the executive branch should be concerned about any extraterrestrials, unless they pose a physical threat. And when I mean pose a physical threat, they already pose a threat by being here, if that's the case, or what was said in the hearing. But I mean, like, more so, and more of an action thing, like something happens where we're possibly being attacked. That's the only time the president is activated and should be worrying about this. But other than that, I mean, I don't think that's a concern of the office of the president or the executive branch as a whole.
Interesting, interesting. I actually disagree, and here's my reason. Um, I think that like Erica and Marina said, I think that the president is like just a figurehead. But I think that the leader of a nation being ignorant of what's going on, in his nation, surrounding his nation, is a huge, huge issue with me. It's like, you being the owner of your home, or the renter of, wherever you live at, and not being consciously aware of what's happening around you. I think it's critical that we charge the president with that. And I think, whether it's the one we currently have or the next one that comes in line, um, I think that they should be aware of what's going on. They should be getting consistent updates from, Congress, from the House, as far as what's going on. I'm not saying he needs to do anything, and I'm not saying that they need to, make certain commands right now, unless we're at a point where it's clear that we've been attacked and that we're in war. Although there really wouldn't be anything we could do if that was the case. I still think that president is still the mouthpiece of our government. And I think that by not being aware, by kind of seeing it as something that would be too much on his plate, his or her plate, because Marina did say that Kamala would be the next president, which I'll save that commentary for later. But
Oh my
um,
God.
yes, I think that um, the president should at least be aware and prepared to have a speech, to at least state, what our government's going to do moving forward. Now that we've been made aware of this, false promises, I wouldn't say, but at least with some honesty and find a way to keep us aware, but also, um, try to keep the hype and the craze that's going to go with that under somewhat some control. But by ignoring it, by treating it like they've been treating it, and saying it doesn't exist and it's nothing to worry about, is going to continue to make us question as citizens, does our leaders need to be quantified more than the way we do when we vote for them? There needs to be more than just what they with their with their stating that they can do for us prior to us voting. I think the next president, because this president that we currently have clearly is unfit to run this country properly. I think the next president that comes in, whomever it is, that they should be making a conscious, concerted effort now to have that on their agenda, to keep an eye and monitor and track and stay updated on what's happening in our skies. And also, uh, when the time is right, be ready to have a prepared response, because as the American people, we are seeing these things, we are paying attention to these things, but we want to make sure that our government, our leadership, is also doing the same. And if they're not, that's a problem. So that's my uh, commentary on it. I don't expect the president to do anything at this point. I don't expect our government to do anything unless they've figured out how what they have can maneuver and work and operate. And until we get to that point, we still need to be aware. And that's what the whole hearing was about. The hearing really exposed how there are sections of the government that's keeping hush and keeping silent about what's going on, so silent to the point where those who wish to speak about it are getting their lives threatened. And now our house has to have a committee to actually go into, seeing if this is something that's legitimate. So that's why we've gotten to this point, is because it's been neglect. And it's going to continue to be neglect if it's not paid attention to. So that's my stance on that. I'm not sure if Malik or Cuban Crisis is back, um, but if not, I think we may be able to wrap this up. Kept it under 2 hours. Thanks everybody in the chat for hanging with us. Marina, also Uncle Leroy, thanks for hanging with us. Any last remarks, comments, insight from you guys? Erica, if you're gonna go first.
My last comments is I am excited. I am excited in spite of how terrifying some of this may, come across because it's new and it's different. I am excited for whatever's to come, whatever, new developments are to come out of the situation. Lastly, we shouldn't be expecting this administration to do anything but allow Biden to sleep This is elder abuse. Elder abuse, all right? This is just really screwed up, okay? The only thing that man need to be doing is taking a nap under the tree with his dog and having some flan and playing bridge
Not
and drinking
fled.
drinking some scotch and not being bothered with all of this, okay? We are horrible, horrible American people. This is why they're not telling us anything, because we're horrible.
An unbothered president, ladies and gentlemen. An unbothered president. Maurice, any last words? Any last comments, insight? I think Maurice might be stepped away. Malik, are you there? I know you have to step away for a moment. Are you present? Malik's probably stepped away. I'll give my last words and then we'll check again and see if those two are there. If not, we'll go ahead and end the show. But thanks everybody for tuning in. Oh, there he goes. Uh,
Yellow. Can you hear me
hey,
now?
yes, sir. We
I don't
definitely hear you
know.
now.
I don't know what was going on. I was having some crazy audio thing going on right there. But no, I was about to say, I'm excited. I'm fascinated. Like I said, I'm remaining skeptical. As we should. At least have some sort of skepticism about this whole thing because there is still an active whistleblower investigation going on, and I wasn't gonna bring this up, but just to put a little bit of balance in there, I'm not gonna go into detail because if you really are interested in this, you'll go find whatever information you can. But there's already been some stuff coming out discrediting Mr. What's his name, Grunge's claims already. So we just keep that in mind. But yeah, I'm gonna remain fairly skeptical about this, but in the same breath, I'm also very excited. Um, you know, uh, I wanna see finally we get some empirical evidence that we're not the only things out here you know what I'm saying, in the entire universe. I think that would be a good thing for us. Just as a species, just for us to have that to know that we're not it. There's something else out there. So yeah, I'm just gonna remain cautiously optimistic about this whole thing. So
Gotcha, gotcha. Fellow optimistic, cautious. Uh, Cuban, are you there? Did you come back? If not, I'll go ahead and maybe you'll come on back. So, as far as what you stated about the dispute of some of Mr. Grush's claims, I think we have to be cautious with that because clearly we're dealing with a government that already has Mr. Grush's head on a chopping block. He's currently being investigated. There are threats of him being arrested, and who knows if there are threats on his life specifically. So, being that this is already a very delicate issue, we do have to be cautious about that because a lot of times they will send the cleaning crew to discredit any claims made to make sure that no one believes in his story. This isn't the first time they've done that regarding UFOs, and it probably won't be the last. So I definitely want to let that be known. Sure, someone may be discrediting certain things. A lot of the meat and potatoes of what Mr. Grush wanted to say won't be heard by the general public. A lot of that will be heard by the committee from the House that was present that are interested in hearing specific details about, answer questions that they had that Mr. Gress volunteered to answer privately. I think that's where the meat and potatoes of what's really going on and why he's under fire is the case. So I think we do have to be careful about that. I will say this is very interesting. It's intriguing. It's definitely got me interested. I've always read books and watched the shows of your Star Wars, Star Trek, and all those different sci-fi movies and things like that. So space and space travel and interactions with non-human species was always something that was fascinating and only existed within the realm of imagination. But when I look at nature and I look at the life that we have in nature, and being that those of us that are human beings are a byproduct of organic and inorganic material, I do think that um, we'd have to give credence to nature. A lot of things that we see as humans, or even things that are considered non-human, already exist within the realm of nature, and there are things that defy certain laws within nature that currently exist and thrive and aren't really seen as threatening because it's a plant. And we're ignoring a lot of things that have taken place that people have reported. There are, proposals that not only are plants communicative, but they have the ability to see to some degree, not with the eyes, but from a sense of being able to mimic and replicate certain, objects from their look to texture and design. We have plants that are able to detect when predators are coming and learn to adjust, whether it's make themselves poisonous, pretend to be dead, things like that. So things like that don't exist with us as humans already exist within nature, and the saying, as above so below. So I think that it's not too far-fetched that there are other life sources, not only on this galaxy but also other galaxies and dimensions, and I'm pretty confident that there's other life forms that exist even from a bioorganism level, um, that exists on other planets as well. All right. Um, I have a question here from Marina. She was asking that uh any of us have YouTube channels. Yes, well, Into the Crisis, that's Malik. I'm gonna send you the link for the podcast. You ain't finna give it to me like that podcast. I'm gonna go ahead and give you the link for that. Erica, do you mind if we share the link to your YouTube?
Sure.
All right, so we'll go ahead and also share the link to Erica's YouTube. Maurice, I know you said in the chat that you have a YouTube channel. Do you mind grabbing that and seeing if you can put that in the chat? That way they have access to it. And also for those who are going to be watching the playback later, they can get access to it as well. And so I put the podcast link in there, and also we'll put um, authentically Erica's YouTube link as well. So that's our channels if you want to follow up with us. But I think continue to stay tuned to the podcast. You ain't finna give it to me like that podcast. Continue to stay tuned to Enter the Crisis, because these are going to be our main hubs. But definitely make sure you subscribe to those other channels. And again, I will post the video of recent UFO UAP sightings from WorldCam here on YouTube. I'll make sure to put a video up for that again. Go watch that, and definitely take a look at it for yourself. Definitely go ahead and leave your commentary, and we will see you guys again. We may even cover this topic again for sure. Before we close out here, Cuban, are you there? Going once, going twice, going three times. Yeah, he's probably busy. So yeah, if there's no other last words, guys, we're out of here. Peace. Thanks again for tuning in. Thanks again for subscribing to all of our channels and all of our platforms. Thanks again for showing your support. Make sure you guys hit that like button and make sure you subscribe as well, okay? Peace out.
Mini